Welcome back to Gale Force Winds Season 4.
Well, folks, welcome back to Gale Force Winds. We have someone here today that has been on the podcast before. Her name is Fatemeh Mohammadi, and she was a guest host.
Yes.
But this time, and frankly, I wasn't in it last time, and that's okay. Dr. Susan Murray was in it, and it was a great experience. And she just did a conversation
With
Kayla Mercer. So that's going to come out shortly. But now that we are here and we have all the equipment set up, I wanted to just have a chat with you, Fatemeh, because I'm absolutely fascinated by, your decision to come here and your business acumen and your perspective on Newfoundland. At the same time, I'd like to share a little bit with you what I've learned about Newfoundland and the economy, and just, maybe we'll do like a half-hour conversation, see where it goes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all the nice things you said about me. I'm very excited for this one specifically because I find that you're someone who trusts into youth empowerment and you trust into what new people have to bring into businesses by providing your own business open to everyone. I've tried to make a lot of connections in Canada and specifically in Newfoundland because I've been at Newfoundland for like 4 or 5 years now. But I feel like you're one of the few individuals who actually is actively working to make the place more welcoming and friendly for people who are living here. And I love that a lot about you. That's one thing that would make me want to keep the connection, want to chat with you, because I have a lot to learn from you at the same time as being a friend, whereas you're a lot older than me, so I would get a chance to actually learn from the things that you experience in Newfoundland. And as a Newfoundlander, I've also traveled a lot, which I think would make you more educated about the world, and it's very interesting. A lot of people in Newfoundland, I believe, I think it's the same everywhere else, but not every person gets a chance to go outside North America. So having the perspective of a North American, specifically a Newfoundlander who have traveled a lot of countries, is very interesting. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, first of all, I forgot to mention that when Fatemeh said to me, you were interested in doing another interview, of course, yes, when and where. And when you said the Alt Hotel in St. John's, frankly, this table, that corner over there, and people who follow me will see, I like working right there. So I'll walk from my house, takes me, 20, 25 minutes to get here, and I'll do a lot of editing on our podcast right here.
Wow.
And I've met one of the owners, Clara Germain, another person who I really want to do an interview with. Maybe you should do that interview.
Oh, wow.
She is fascinating. And that whole family, I don't know a lot about the family, but this hotel is beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, it's very welcoming. I like the colors. You wouldn't find as much colors in every hotel that you go, but I feel like that matches downtown St. John's with the houses and all the paintings in the background and all the colors, so I love that a lot. But I'm a huge fan of food. So if a place has good food, I'll go to that place. And Alt has Pear Restaurant, one of my favorite restaurants in town. So I'll try my best to, if I have any meetings, to arrange it here just because I like the environment, I like the privacy. I feel like if you're going out for a business meeting, that will be the best area in town, whereas it's super small. It's very friendly, but it's also very professional.
Oh.
And I love the food.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
So when it comes to, business in Newfoundland, I appreciate your comments. I really think when I say I'm trying to empower youth, I am. And I'll dig into that a little bit. What I had someone in my life a young person who thought that Newfoundland's economy was a little bit shaky. And frankly, I think coming out of the pandemic, it has been. But what I guess I've had the experience, Fatemeh, of doing is traveling around Newfoundland. I travel the world, but Newfoundland has particular interest to me because it's my backyard. And seeing the economy and what's on the horizon is extremely exciting for me. So if I was to ask you this question, you're in business school and you've come from Dubai, what is your, I guess, understanding of the economic situation in Newfoundland right now?
one thing I learned about economy, and I've learned that from my dad, is that when a situation like COVID happened, that it affected everywhere, it affected every country in the world, and all the economies failed. I know that Newfoundland and Canada in general might not be standing where they were pre-pandemic, but one thing you don't have to forget is you always compare yourself to yourself many years ago. If you look at other countries and their economic stance right now, Canada is actually, I would say, in a better stance in comparison to a lot of places. There is space for improvements, specifically in Newfoundland, because I feel like it has lots of potentials, but it needs for people to give it a chance. Like, you gotta give it a chance for it to be better. Like, you can't just wait for it to get better.
No.
You have to create opportunities, you have to create spaces for people to represent new ideas. You have to make it happen before expecting it ahead of time. Yes, we're still trying to get back to where we were, but maybe we can get somewhere better than that. Maybe we can pass that. It will take time. It's not always the best for everybody, but one thing that's very important is that do not compare yourself to where you were pre-pandemic. Look at others and compare yourself and the strengths that you have and create opportunities. The opportunities part is very, very important. I feel like if a space is without opportunities, there's no room for growth. But as soon as you throw out opportunities at people, specifically younger generation, they would have the chance to actually show you how you can make it better. It's a process. It takes time. Just like someone who got sick at pandemic and they need time to heal. Same thing with the economy. It takes longer though. There's a lot of businesses that went bankrupt, a lot of businesses that failed. It will take time for other businesses to replace them and stand where they were standing pre-pandemic, but it's possible. In Newfoundland or anywhere else. Because we've seen it in the past, it's possible to do it. It will just take time.
Let me ask you this, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I am asking you to constructively criticize, and what I mean by that is to try and pick a couple of places or things that you think could be better based on the experience you've had. I mean, you've traveled a lot of places in the world. You grew up in Dubai, correct?
Yes.
And I mean, when it comes to service economy and in a big centers, so what are a couple of areas that maybe you can think of that you think could be an improvement in St. John's in particular, and maybe Newfoundland as a whole?
One thing I find really interesting is that the best services offered to people in Newfoundland are private, and not everybody has access to that. I find that glamorizing normal services is not very positive, specifically because not everyone can afford it, not everyone will go after it, and that will kind of create this space between your business and the actual people who live in that area, specifically Newfoundland if we're talking. For example, healthcare. I know that in Canada, you guys have family doctors. Maybe focusing on having more family doctors or having spaces for people who can't afford to go into the hospital to contact and be with those family doctors. I feel like Canada has a lot of areas to improve in healthcare. You guys have absolutely so much better healthcare than elsewhere, like United States, that is your neighbor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, can it improve? Yes. Can it improve in Newfoundland? Yes. Can the government provide more hospitals or more clinics? Probably. I don't have enough knowledge about that, but it's possible. That's one area that people need to focus on. Another thing is mental health. That's very, very, very important. It's something that I feel like not only Newfoundland, but because we're talking about Newfoundland can focus on a lot. A good mental health will end up in a good economy. It's true. Like if you're anxious working in an economical stance, then you might not be the best at your job. But when you're having the positive attitude, the positive will happen. And being in that area needs to have a good mental stand.
Well, it's funny you say that. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Vancouver, and I was, brought down to what's called East Hastings. You've been to Vancouver before?
No. I'm going to this summer though.
Well, Vancouver is supposedly, one of Canada's richest cities. But I can tell you, and I hesitate to bring it up, but we went to a 4-block area, and there's probably 1,000 people. And I asked a guy from Vancouver how many he estimated were on the sidewalk, homeless. 4 blocks, probably 1,000 people, many of which are literally lying on the street, completely gone on drugs. And I really am shaken up by it, And to your point, mental health is so important, post-pandemic in particular.
I think that pandemic didn't only attack economy, it definitely attacked our mental health too, because staying indoors for a really long time affected every job, every student, every employee. So it will take time to go back, but if we don't invest on it now, it will be probably harder to get back on it in the future. It doesn't matter where you live. Even in UAE, when I traveled back home, things were a lot different. A lot of places that were always loud were a lot more quiet. And that was one thing that I realized just because I was away. My parents didn't realize that because they were living in that space. But as soon as an outsider comes in, they realize, okay, the space has changed, the environment has changed a little bit, even with the way that people interact with each other. And that's a given. Like, you can't change that. It will take time. The only important thing is, are we investing on it? Are we investing in a better healthcare? Are we investing in a better housing? Because housing prices is another issue that's blooming in Canada and elsewhere, and specifically in Newfoundland. Finding a house in Newfoundland has been really rough. It took me 7 or 8 months to find my new place. So, and I'm a student, so I need to have a space. Like, I can't go back and live with my parents. Not that I'm saying that's
No.
what it should be, but it's a lot harder when you're an international person looking for a house. I feel like that's an issue that they can solve, again, if they invest on it now rather than later. And bringing youth into it, just sending out questions. We get all these advertisements on our phone that we just scroll. Why isn't there ever a question given?
Yeah.
If that's answering your question, I hope.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've told me a little bit about that in the past. When it comes to an international student, it's not that easy. I think about how hard it was for me, and I grew up here. The concept of you coming here and the cultural differences, the homeless challenge, that you had, and then you got to go in and sit in a classroom and try to figure that out. I mean, English is not your first language.
It's my second language, but I actually...
It sounds like your first, because you are so good at English.
Thank you so much. I'll take that as a compliment.
You better.
Yes. I always knew that I'm gonna leave at some point because I was always in love with learning different cultures. I knew that I was coming to North America one day. I didn't know where specifically. That was a decision I made at age 9. And everyone laughed at me and everyone thought it's just, a dream. She's not gonna leave. Because right now living in UAE might be a bigger dream than living in Canada, specifically on a business aspect. But at the same time, I think I left home to find independency and to learn new cultures. I wanted to be in an environment that's completely different. I'm a city girl. I've always had everything around me. I've never, if I was home, I'd probably never experienced homelessness. I had a really hard time explaining my situation to my parents just because they've never seen North America. They don't know anything about the housing. The housing is different in each country. Back home, it's not like 3 months, 1 month when you rent a place. It's an annual contract most of the times. I know that in Canada that can happen too. You can have an annual rental, but for me it was more like monthly payment, or if they want to ask you to move out, they will give you a time frame. That's not a thing in UAE. The rules and regulations are different, completely different. So explaining all those things, that's a question that my dad asked. He's like, why did you leave? But at the same time, am I enjoying it? Yes. I learned a lot at a very young age. I learned how to pay my own bills. a lot of people don't learn that until age like 29, 30. I learned that at a very young age. Was it hard? Yes. Will I do it again? Yes. Am I going to move again? Probably, depending on the future. But the main thing that I was looking for moving out was, again, to stand on my own, find independency, meet new people, and learn from them. Because I find it very interesting. We all have different perspectives, and people in different cultures have more different perspectives. And meeting Canadians, I was like, okay, this is my space, this is my place, now I'm learning from them. I pick up on the things that I like and try to avoid what I don't like. In my opinion, no culture is perfect.
No.
The more cultures you learn about, the better human you can be.
Yeah.
That's just my motto. I'll go with that, I'll roll with it, I'll try to learn what I like in different cultures and stay with it. I learned how to be kind from a Canadian culture. I'm going to keep that with me. I learned to compliment people. If I like your outfit, I'm going to tell you that I like it. That was a thing that I never learned where I was from. It was more like, but why would she say that? But now I can be more genuine about the compliments that I give.
Frankly, I'm a little nervous about that because it's not an easy thing, especially for a man to do anymore. You know, we're not allowed to say that you look nice in your clothes or anything like that.
You can always say that I feel like you're educated, or I feel like there's so many compliments you can give.
Yeah.
That's not a give. Like that wasn't a lot in my culture. Like we don't give compliments here and there. We don't talk to servers as much, for example. But I feel like it's always nice to go around and learn about people's culture. And whereas I was super young, I was like, I'm gonna do this no matter what. I chose it myself. I was never sent away. I still go back and forth, visit my parents. But I really enjoy, again, I really enjoy my time here. I really enjoy my life being away. It is hard. There are nights that I cried so loudly, being like, I want to go home, I want my mom. But I wake up the next morning and I'm like, this was your decision, roll with it.
Yeah.
You chose it yourself, stand by it. No one else chose this life for me. I did it myself, and I'm happy about it. It's hard, but at the end of the day, I feel like as a female, I'm a lot stronger than I anticipated that I would be right now in Canada. So I'm liking that.
Well, look, you know, as you're a friend of my son's, as you talk, I can tell you this, I'm sure your parents miss you a lot.
Yes.
But as parents, you know, have you ever heard the saying, if you love them, set them free?
Yes.
All we want to know is that you can make your own way in this world. And, you know, for me, I was 18 when I went to British Columbia in the Canadian Navy, but I was still within the Canadian culture. Was it a challenge for me? You're darn right it was.
Yeah.
It was very, very difficult. I was only 4 years removed from my father dying. There was all kinds of issues, but I still am incredibly flabbergasted at the move that you made. And let's talk a little bit about, I guess, you know, you're of an Iranian culture as well, which, frankly, it's probably the least understood culture in North America, particularly with what's going on now. And if you don't want to talk about it, you just say it, okay?
Yes.
But,
no,
you know, and I don't want to we won't get into any politics or anything like that. But
no, I am proud of my culture. I definitely like my culture the most. I feel like it's different. It is different. There are things in Iranian culture that I like, and there are things in the Iranian culture that I dislike. But one thing that's very important to me is that don't forget where you come from.
yeah,
I never came to Canada to like take the culture and be like, this is who I am. I came to learn. I come from an Iranian culture that stands with me wherever I go. And no matter how hard I try, I will never learn a culture as good as an Iranian culture, because that's what I grew up with. And that was the only thing my dad told me when I was leaving. He was like, 3 things. Don't forget where you come from. Never look at people from up. Never look at people from down. That's all I've learned. And I came with that attitude here. And I was like, the more you respect a culture, the more they respect yours. When I start learning a Canadian culture, they'll get to know an Iranian culture. When I question them about their culture, they'll question me about my culture, and at the end of the day, you will have two parties that are extremely educated about two different cultures in the world, and that's what I like. In media, there's obviously all sorts of political, positive or negative news that you will read, but at the end of the day, you will never learn a culture unless you meet someone from that culture. You can read all sorts of books, but when you see the gesture, you're like, oh, okay. In my culture, for example, we like for female to walk ahead. The male normally walks right behind them. Is it a good or a bad thing? I don't know. But as soon as I came to Canada, I realized in Newfoundland, people open the doors and they keep it open for the next person to come in. Am I doing that in UAE? Yes. Am I expecting people to treat me like an Iranian here? Probably not, because not everybody is educated. You don't have to expect for everyone to know that. But am I willing to talk about it? Absolutely. You tell me about yours, I'll tell you about mine. I don't think everyone is pressured to learn about it, but I feel like meeting people from that culture, trying to understand the culture is very, very important. And again, it all starts by asking a question. Yeah. What do you like about my culture? Do you know about my culture? Do you know where Iran is? What's your favorite food? It starts with food. Like, I've never had poutine before. To Canada, I've tried it for the first time here. But at the same time, I like taking my friends to a Persian restaurant, and I'll tell them about it, and I'd be like, do you like every Persian food? And I'm like, no, I am from that culture, and I love a lot of foods, but I probably like Italian more, or I probably enjoy pizza more. At the end of the day, I'm a learner, and I like learning about different cultures, and I find that when you put that genuine person out there, there will be more people attracted to your culture and to learn about your culture and all that.
Well, it's funny, you know, someone was actually saying something to me a couple of weeks ago. It's around the time that the Iranian president or prime minister? President died?
President, yeah.
President died in a helicopter. And anyway, he said something disparaging about Iran, and I'm like, well, and it was around, you know, the way men treat women. And I said, sure, in my own generation, Fatemeh, my father didn't want my mother to work. So in the North American culture, we're not that far removed from some of the ways things are done around, you know, women. And it was interesting in your interview with Kayla, you know, there's more women now in the workplace, but it's still not where it needs to be here in North America, right? You know?
Actually, 65% of graduates in Iran are females.
I did not know that. See, this is why I love sitting with you.
So, like, they're putting a lot of emphasis on female getting into work. Working as a female is not a negative thing anymore in the Middle East, I assume. And a lot of places might be. I'm not talking specifically, I'm talking generally, but I feel like people are more okay with female being in businesses, working and everything and all that. And I feel like those are the updates you don't get on the media. A lot of people don't know about the lifestyle that people are having. A lot of the movements, when they happen, you just realize, oh, it's actually a thing, but people are actually living their day-to-day life with those experiences, and the world doesn't have an idea. So when you get to meet people from there, or when you actually educate yourself, you'll be like, oh wow. Or when the news happened, like the president of Iran, the late president of Iran, but when that news happened, you'll type Iran and then you'll get more into it, and you're like, okay, what happened before that?
Yeah.
So what did he do? And that's that moment that you're like, okay, maybe I should educate myself more. I've seen a lot of people that don't know where each country is on a map.
I did a geography degree, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, I did. That was my first.
So you wouldn't be one of those people?
Well, I don't know. There's still a lot of countries. I don't know where they are, but we won't get into that.
But it's fun. It's fun to get to know people.
But that's where travel comes in, and you're right. You know, I've had a blessing that, as you know, as a young fella, I traveled with the Navy, and it really opened my eyes. And it's funny, like in Newfoundland, we have had a kind of a cultural, I would call it kind of a downturn, where some people would snub their nose, the word Newfie, you know, and all that. I found, as a young person traveling around Canada, I was empowered because I might be sitting with someone from Vancouver who's never been outside of Vancouver.
Oh my
well,
God.
I've been all over the place. So they start telling me about this, that, and the other thing, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, but you've only been down the street. What are you talking about? Not trying to make them feel bad, but if they start, making a Newfie joke or something like that, that's when I get my back up, right?
I find it really interesting. Sometimes I don't, when people ask me where I'm originally from, well, I'm Persian, so I would say I'm Iranian. And then they would have like all these sort of ideas and takes from Middle East.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you please name 5 countries in Middle East? Just 5. Like, you already know I'm Iranian, so that's from just one of them. Name 4 more. Can you do that?
I would struggle
And
myself.
Yeah, so they would be like, no, I can't. I'm like, so having an opinion, if you have an opinion about those spaces, at least know where it is, at least know the language they're speaking, and at least know the population. So when you're giving out information and when you're giving out an opinion, at least it's reliable. If you're talking about Middle East, educate yourself a little bit. Do a little bit of research before giving out an opinion. If you can go, well, obviously traveling is not possible for everybody. I'm an Iranian, so I have the toughest time to travel. But at the same time, I'm like, don't give an opinion out because that might hurt somebody's feelings if they're from that culture. They might be like, you're undermining my culture, you're undermining my country. A lot of people are patriotic. So educate yourself first before you give an opinion. And obviously when people don't travel or when people are not educated enough saying something, you're like, do I really want to continue this conversation with this person? Probably not.
Yeah. But you complimented me at the beginning about helping empower you and being open and all that. But frankly, I probably may never travel to Iran, but I get to listen to you. I have never been to the Middle East yet, but I've learned from you just listening to you. And I think what I think has to happen in North America, there has to be more of an open acceptance of listening to you and people that are from the Middle East. And vice versa, frankly,
Yes.
right?
One thing I want to mention is that I grew up in UAE, specifically Dubai, and the one thing I learned from UAE is to respect people, for them to respect you back. You see a lot of nationalities in UAE, and you'll get to experience to go to school with international people in UAE that come with their culture. In a school, if you're having different cultures, they celebrate. Like I went to an Iranian school, I would take Christmas off, and I would also get Nowruz, the New Year's of the Persians, off as well. But one fun thing, they try to educate people in the mall. If Nowruz is happening, they'll decorate the mall in a way that people can get educated about that. If Diwali is happening, same thing. If Christmas is happening, so that people feel like they're home. People like, oh, I'm being presented a view that I would expect to see at home. I would come to the mall shop and I see all these sales that are happening for Christmas, but then I come back, I see it for Ramadan. So they're practicing to celebrate every culture. The celebration of every culture made Dubai an international city for people to feel comfortable living there. You don't see that as much everywhere else, and I totally get it. You probably won't see it elsewhere in the Middle East as much, but I feel like that's one thing that if the government's focus on would make people actually be interested in come, because you don't have to let go of what you grew up with. You'll celebrate, you'll add on to the celebration. My mom celebrates everything. My mom celebrates Yalda, she celebrates Nowruz, she celebrates Christmas. She will come home with a bunch of flowers. She'd be like, Chinese New Year, she would celebrate everything that she could. Because you're like, if others are happy, why can't we be? Like, you can celebrate with others, and this is a way of kind of making yourself grow up in a way that most of the people won't be.
Let's talk about that. You mentioned the word happiness. Ultimately, that's all that we're seeking in life is happiness, peace, contentment, happiness. For me, my life has been about building an economic foundation. You know, as I said, I grew up with a family where my dad died when I was only 14. That was like an economic bombshell, a nuclear explosion, because it really threw our family off. I'm going to get a bit emotional here now, but what I see is when an economy is doing well, such an opportunity, Fatemeh, for happiness, you know, and joy and just being able to do things. So this, no matter what culture it is, you know, we all have that desire, don't we?
Yeah, we all have the desire of traveling. We all have the desire of having fun. We all have the desire of taking a break. But you also have to recognize that not everybody can have that. A lot of people fight to get there. A lot of people have to fight now for their kids to get there. My dad was one of them. He's been working. He hasn't traveled as much as I did, and I only traveled because he's been saving up. He's been trying so hard his whole life to make that happen for me and my brother. So that's not a thing that you will experience just in UAE or just in Iran. You'll experience that everywhere.
Yeah.
Depending on the job that you have, depending on the savings that you have. I want to bring in the topic of taxing because I didn't experience that as much. We don't have much taxes in UAE. We don't have much taxes in Iran. So when I came to Canada, I was quite surprised of the taxing. I don't have a direct opinion on that because I'm not fairly educated, but I would say it was different and it was new. Because it was hard for me to do my taxes because I was like, why am I paying again? And then I started doing the research and I was like, okay, how are they doing it in UAE? How are they doing it in Iran with lower taxes? But then I started the comparison of different provinces and it made a lot of sense to me. But then it also answers the question why there's a lot of homeless people. Because they ultimately have tried. I don't think that, well, debatable, but I feel like a lot of people, well, like Newfoundland specifically, they have a really high tax in comparison to the other provinces in Canada, but that will also bring you to the fact that can people actually save up?
Yeah.
Can everyone travel with those taxes? Can everyone pay for a vacation? Or they need to save up for the next generation? I don't know, I feel like it's a process, but there's hope.
Well, it's an interesting topic,
Yeah.
and you know it can be controversial, but I think we'll stay on the higher end of it. But when it comes to the UAE, how do they pay for the roads, and if they're not taxing as much, how does that get done?
I feel like you got to also understand that the location, the fact that they're located next to Persian Gulf and they have a lot of oil. Canada is a vast country. They're not as big. They're probably smaller than Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So, and they also have less population. So they have a lot of money coming from oil, and they also have a lot of, I feel like UAE invested a lot in the past that people don't know. You look at it and you're like, oh wow, all these skyscrapers, how are they paying for it? They've been investing so much time and money years ago for this to happen. They've been trusting their youth so much, so much, beyond anywhere else, I can say that. So when you look at it, you be like, it's possible. It takes time, but it's possible. But you also have to understand the population matters, the location matters, recognizing the things that you have around you matters. I think they make most of their money from oil though, so.
Right, so the revenue would come in from the companies and not necessarily individuals doing the work.
No,
right?
it's very much so government-based, I would say. Abu Dhabi is the, I would say the biggest.
So you know, my youngest son, Sebastian, just got his first job, so this is a conversation
Very
we've been
proud
having.
of you.
Yeah, well, Sebastian he's working at Belbin's, and one of the things when he got his first check was he looked at it and he goes, what are all these
Numbers
and things taken away from my pay? It was the first time, he's going to be 17, but it's the first time that he had ever experienced that. And I said to him, well, the roads that we drive on, you know, the light poles and all of the infrastructure has to come from somewhere. But, you know, if you listen to anything Warren Buffett says, he talked about, you know, if you've made a good living, then just pay the taxes. And I'll give you another example. I was in Turks and Caicos in one of our jobs, and anyone who follows us knows we've done a bunch of things down there. But I went golfing, and I ended up being paired up with this gentleman, fascinating guy. And I said to him, he had made a lot of money in Bitcoin. Anyway, from Montreal, and I said to him, I said, you know, what do you think of the taxes we're paying in Canada? And his response blew me away. He said, Gerry, I don't begrudge 1 cent of the money I pay to the Canadian government. And I was kind of taken back, because normally you hear business people say, oh, we're paying this money. I mean, my dad came from Haiti, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, now I know where this is going. And he said, the fact that we live in a country like Canada that has an enormous safety net and just peaceful compared to where Haiti is right now. And I was like, okay. Again, what I love about travel is you end up meeting people like that. If I was here in St. John's, I may need a tourist. Would I get into a conversation like that? Probably not, right? So you are why I'm so impressed with someone so young being out there and getting into these types of conversations.
I actually walk by the harbor every now and again, because I find a lot of the boats and stuff coming by are coming from different countries. I met a couple from Sweden last year. I talked to them fairly quick, I would say. They had a flag on their boat, and I was like, oh, you come from Sweden? And she was like, do you know our flag? I was like, yes, I do. And then they told me how their kids are married now, and they decided to travel the world, and this is their first stop in North America. And I was like, oh wow, that's so interesting. And the next thing was like, this is my email. If you ever visited Sweden, come by. Would love to go here and there and blah, blah, blah. This is the connection. I probably wouldn't be reaching out, but at the same time, I need back to the happiness. I needed that happiness. That's a free happiness is free sometimes. That's an example of a free happiness, walking by the harbor, meeting new people. But you're right. When you're traveling, you're basically putting yourself out there for people to reach out to you. We're going to end up talking and having the most weird but fun journeys ever. I've stayed in the airports for the longest time whenever my flights get delayed. And I find that those delays are the best ones. I hate them. I don't like them very much. I don't like my flights getting delayed. But at the same time, I'll get to see a lot of people coming in and going out to different spaces, and they'll come sit next to me and we'll have a chat, where they were from, where they come, what did they do in that place. And I'll get to know about the places that I might never end up in to travel and stuff. But yes.
As you're talking, there's Harley Davidsons out there going crazy, and there's a vacuum in the back there, but this is still a wonderful place. Newfoundland in particular is something that's near and dear to my heart, and we've been talking about 36 minutes now. Just a few more points. What I'm really intrigued about from my perspective is what value that I think is seen here by the youth. And you said to me that we're trying to empower youth, and we are. One of the big themes that I've found, and it kind of happened organically, is that when we learn about the economic benefits in various things happening in Newfoundland, I'm trying to get that out there. So if I have you on and you attract a much younger audience to listen to this, I think it's really important, because as I said to you in my note back and forth on LinkedIn, there's probably 6 or 7 or 8 projects in Newfoundland now in the multiple of billions of dollars. The Premier said they need in the next 5 years 25,000 people, new jobs here. Like the opportunity, Fatemeh, in Newfoundland is huge.
Do you think that those jobs are reaching out to youth?
No.
Okay.
In terms of what, like them knowing that they're there, or the fact that they're an opportunity for you?
Both.
Yeah. No, I don't think that. I think most of the people that Alan and I interview are, say, our age, and they don't know how to make the information out there. They'll put it on various sites, and there's some really good companies that are helping to get this information out there. What I think is being missed is that historically in Newfoundland there's been a lot of, like they call them, boondoggles. Someone said to me the other day, and you probably never heard of this, the Sprung Greenhouse. That's a project that one of the premiers started in the late 80s, 90s, somewhere around there. Many millions of dollars, and it failed. But a lot of Newfoundlanders will continue to bring up these boondoggles or these challenging economic things that all failed. What someone said to me at one of our conferences was, we went to, I think it was the energy conference last year, and he said, when Hibernia came, I think it was, I can't remember the exact number, but it was like $3, $4, $5, or $9 billion. Well, holy Moses, the oil and gas industry is still incredibly robust. That's many multiples of billions.
Yeah, you're right by the harbor.
Exactly.
You're probably having you and BC, I say you, I mean Newfoundland. Newfoundland and BC are probably at the best location ever. You have access to waters right next door.
Well, on that note, Alan and I went a couple of Februarys ago down to Argentia, and I don't know if you've ever been to Argentia, but Argentia had an American military base, a runway,
Yes.
and it also had a port. So Argentia is a port and a runway, and that runway right now is not being used for planes, it's being used for things called monopiles. So monopiles are the big structures that hold up the huge windmills. They're built in Europe, they're on their way to the US, but when they need one, say one breaks or whatever, they need it stored relatively close by. Well, guess where that is? Argentia. That's many, many, many millions of dollars of storage. But just for me to talk a little bit about what I've learned, you've got World Energy GH2 in Stephenville, which is, I think it's $12 billion. We interviewed a lady, Julie Lemieux, with the salt domes. So salt domes, I don't know, have you ever heard of what a salt dome is? I didn't know what a salt dome was, but a salt dome is actually a cavern where salt exists. They can extract the salt, and then the rock is not porous. It's solid rock, cap it, and it can hold liquid and
Wow.
liquid and what's the opposite of liquid? I've lost the English language. It's air. You know what I mean? Anyway, so my point being is when she explained this to us, so she was saying, I can't remember how many there are, 50 or more. Each one has the potential of like $500 million, and there's 50 of those. So then you got the hydrogen that could be stored in these salt domes. But not only that, the salt gets extracted and gets sold. What? Who would have thought? Newfoundland is full of wind. Now we're going to actually start monetizing wind. You get where I'm going with
Yes.
this, right? So, and this.
Imagine having houses that you get the energy from the wind in St. John's. Can you imagine that?
I can.
Yes,
I can.
it's possible. Like if we have designs, obviously I'm not an engineering student, so that's just an idea. I'm not educated in engineering. I'm just saying if you have a house that can generate the power that you need for that house from the wind power, being in St. John's, that's it. Because that's what they're doing in a lot of places like UAE. They have a lot of sun, or the sunlight, so they extract power from sunlight.
So you see a lot of
There are buildings
power.
that have I feel like the whole energy that they use in the streets for the lights and stuff comes from sunlight. I think it's the same in Canada. But for specifically St. John's, because St. John's is the third windiest city in the world, saying that, you can make a lot of energy from that, so it's possible.
We're competing with a vacuum here now. But we'll clue it up shortly. But you know what, Fatemeh, this is my point to you. I just think that your experience, and I know you have a big interest in international business, but it's one thing to go to a classroom, you get something out of it, but the extracurricular stuff that you're doing with Enactus, your ability to bring someone like Kayla Mercer in, who you will see, that's who Fatemeh interviewed before we sat down. Just your ability to talk to people is incredible, and I think you should be very proud of yourself for that.
Thank you so much. You're too kind to me. I find that when I first came to Canada, I lost my self-esteem and my self-confidence completely. I was like, I couldn't take myself out of my house to even go grocery shopping because I was afraid if someone asked me a question, or if I end up having an issue, I wasn't even able to talk to a cashier. I was at that point. And then I get to know this website called FocusMate. I recommend it to anyone.
What's it?
FocusMate.
Yep.
It's a website that you can work with anyone in the world. You set a goal, and then you mute yourself. And I get to meet some of the best people ever. And I also get to work on myself in my room. I get to work on myself to talk with people. I get my self-esteem little by little back. Because if I mess up talking to this person, I'm probably not going to work with them ever again. It was just a one-time thing. And I also get a chance to talk to people outside Canada, and they would ask me about Canada, which I didn't have much of a knowledge. So that would kind of make me want to go outside and learn more about this place so I can build up on my self-esteem and my self-confidence. So that's how I gained my self-esteem and my self-confidence back in Canada. It was hard. For a year and a half, 2 years, that was my life. Being in a room, doing my schoolwork, not being able to hang out. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have one friend in Canada. I probably had more friends outside, but I was so afraid to get out of my bubble and be myself the way I used to be. We talked about it with Kayla, the way I used to be. But then being on that website, I was like, okay, if I spoke to someone in Netherlands, I've never been to Netherlands, I can probably do it in Canada. Okay, they asked me a question about what's the main business in Newfoundland, so I can probably ask that from a local person. So I would start walking downtown, going to an ice cream store, being like, so you were by the harbor, what's the biggest business in Newfoundland? So this is how I get to the questions that I've been asked and the answers I wanted to give to people outside Canada made me gain my self-esteem back. So I find really interesting. Now that you mentioned, I just remembered so casually that yes, I use that platform, that website, and it helped me a lot. It was sad. Like we all have those moments. I was never always bubbly. I never had the self-esteem to talk to random people. But then after that, I was like, maybe I should bring the real me back. It's the time now.
Well, it's interesting, we all go through ebbs and flows, and it's funny, for me, I'm 58 years of age now, and, this new business that I've started, there was a period of time where I said during the pandemic, I think I'll slow down. I've been working for almost 40 years, and now I'm busier than I've ever been in my whole life, but it's with something that I'm really, really passionate about, and it's not just about business in terms of what I'm going to do to make money from a client. It's about conversations like this. And I mean, this conversation is something, and thank you, you've agreed to sit with me. We're going to continue to do our Tuesday night episodes. Those episodes started in the pandemic on Zoom. We've morphed into, a company that does custom content for companies around the world, but there's nothing better, Fatemeh, than sitting, for me anyway, with someone like you, particularly in the place that I grew up. And I had lots of chances to go other places, and I don't regret much, but there's part of me when I look at you and I look at my own son Spencer now, who's in Germany. Should I have lived my life somewhere else? Maybe, but I also know I had the benefit of being able to get on a plane and go. But I also know that there's something really special about this island that we're on. To your point, being able to go down to the harbor and meet a couple that came from Sweden on a boat, Yeah. So for that reason, I think you have actually gotten a little bit of that piece of Newfoundland. No matter where you end up in your life, will never be gone from you. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I find really interesting, people that are from Newfoundland always call Newfoundland as a home with a smile on their face. I think that's a positive thing, because a lot of people be like, okay, I'm from this place, duh, that's home. But in Newfoundland, they're like, I'll go everywhere, but you know what? I feel like I gotta come back. I miss Newfoundland. I never felt it until my last trip, because I've been here for a while. Yeah. On my last trip, I was like, okay, I had fun. I gotta go home now. And that feeling, I gotta go home now, is a thing that I learned that you will see it a lot in Newfies. You would see it a lot in people that are from Newfoundland. They will call home with a smile on their face. They're open to taking on adventure, going on a journey, going on a vacation, going on a break, do whatever, but they can see themselves coming back to Newfoundland. That's not one thing you will see a lot elsewhere. And I learned it from Newfoundland, that once you find a place you belong to, you always go back to it. Yeah. And there's a lot of Newfie people that feel Newfoundland is home, and they'll come back.
Yeah.
They'll go wherever, but they always see Newfoundland as their ultimate home. But again, one thing that stands out to me the most is the smile, that they're like, oh, this is home.
Yeah.
I gotta come back. That's interesting, because like you might look at it from the outside, you'd be like, okay, but you might have more opportunities elsewhere. But to them, Newfoundland is just home. Home is not a place necessarily that gives you opportunities. Home is a place that you feel comfortable. At the end of the day, you walk in, you're like, comfort.
Yeah.
That's where I belong. And I've seen it a lot in Newfoundland, which is pretty interesting from an outsider perspective, because I'm not from Newfoundland. But seeing that in an everyday basis, I'm like, maybe I should find myself a place that I'd be like, I obviously am. I have a home. I'm from Iran. I can always go back. I have my parents waiting for me in Dubai with open arms. But at the same time, I'm still super young, and it takes me a while to find this is it. This is where I'm going to. But you will see that in a lot of newfies at a young age. They will be like, oh yeah, I'm planning on going abroad to do this, this, and that for a business. But you know what? When I get old, or when I'm like, you know, when I have enough, I want to come back. Because I feel comfortable here. I feel more attached to this place than anywhere else. And they come back. So that's a good point. I would say, like, it also answered your question, but that's an interesting point about newfies.
Well, I think part my thinking on this is that Newfoundland brings you in touch with nature. Today is a good example. I mean, it got up to, on our deck was 30 degrees Celsius in the shade. Yesterday in St. John's was 5 degrees Celsius, blowing a gale and rain. Where else in the world, besides maybe the Arctic or the Antarctic, does it go up and down like that? So one last thing I'll tell you is that, you know, no matter what the travel that I've done, and it's been pretty interesting, one of the most enchanting vacations that I ever had was in a place called Kings Point, Newfoundland. It's over by Springdale. And just to describe what happened, we went to a restaurant in a kind of a hotel/restaurant that literally has a deck that goes out over the ocean. And it's a fjord. Picture that. Kings Point. In the fjord was a grounded iceberg.
Wow.
I had my Sea-Doo there. While we were waiting to be served, we were taking rides over to the iceberg. Honestly, I mean, it's just so difficult to not to be, you know, it's just you're so in touch with nature when something like that happens. And you know, that hasn't happened since. That was in 2019. But again, no matter where I am in the world, and when I tell people, you know, and we've been some pretty interesting places, when you tell someone that, how many times can you go out to an iceberg on a little Sea-Doo? You know, it's it's
pretty impossible.
It is.
Yeah.
So anyway, that point I make, and that's probably why Newfoundlanders, I think, are so enamored with the place, because it isn't the weather, as you know. But again, you know, I'm going to say thank you to you.
Thank you.
Well, I think what is really important for me is that, you know, Gale Force Winds is building a brand, building conversations, and we're trying to bring some diversity into it. But you're so articulate, and you know, you did an hour and a bit with Kayla, and I was just so excited to listen to it. And by the way, if you're interested in LinkedIn, when this episode comes out, Fatemeh and Kayla had a wonderful exchange, and it was fairly lengthy, but it was really interesting about LinkedIn and how important it is. So, you know, I think what you're getting out of our conversations is not the journeys are inspiring and important, but also some of the knowledge. And I guess one thing I'm going to say to you is that you have an incredible amount to offer because of your willingness at the age of 9 in your head to say, I'm going to go to North America. Some people would say that. How many people around the world saying, I'm going to go do something really, really risky? You've done it. That tells me that there's no stopping you wherever you're going to go.
Thank you so much. That means a lot hearing it from you specifically, because you're one of the most successful people I've met in Newfoundland, just because we're talking about Newfoundland. Getting feedbacks like that is probably going to make me dream more, but I'm definitely going to work on it. I think it takes time, but again, nothing's going to happen the next day. but I'm very interested in seeing what Canada has to bring for me and what I have to offer back to Canada.
Yeah, and Canada needs you right now because I think, we are on the precipice of having so much influence from the United States, and it's pretty negative influence right now. I think what you're going to be able to offer is something that this country needs, and for that, you're going to have a place here. If you make this your home for the rest of your life, you will provide an enormous amount of benefit, and there'll be a lot of happiness for you because of it. So,
the ultimate happiness, though, I just want to add that, is when your parents are with you. I miss my one thing that is negative about moving out, going away, is that sometimes I think about going back home and wanting to talk to my mom. I can obviously FaceTime her, I can probably call her, but the presence is different. And I feel like that's another point that the Newfie people like about Newfoundland, is that their parents are around them. I've always been away from the rest of my family, so does my mom. So we kind of bound with each other. She understands me the most, and sometimes not having her around is probably the toughest thing I experience. So wherever I go, I would love for them to come and visit. They haven't been to Canada yet, but again, I love Dubai. Growing up in Dubai, I would say it's probably one of the safest cities on earth. I stand by my words. I love it there. I would always go back. If I find a job there, am I going to go back? Yes, but I always like to connect the places I lived in. If I can connect Canada to UAE, I would totally do that because I have knowledge of both environments now at this point in my life. And this is what I like. I like to go into places, gaining knowledge and learning how connect the businesses. What do they like that are similar? Well, how can I get them closer to each other? Because I feel like what we're missing in the world is closeness. Before any politics, I feel like you need to understand how we're all the same at the end of the day. Yeah. And people like me, I'm not a politician, can probably bring something new to the table and connect them on a different basis, business specifically. That's why I like international businesses, because you'll get to work with different businesses outside your area, and you'll get to learn about them.
Well, as you were talking just then, you reminded me of, this is going to sound funny, a bridge. And I was thinking in my head, I was listening, but I also had this image of you being a bridge. Think about how beautiful a bridge is. A bridge connects.
I like doing that a lot. Most of the friendships that I have, I can never be friends with just one person. I like introducing my friends to each other, because if I'm getting along with you, you're probably going to get along with my friends, and that's how it is. I like introducing people to each other because I find that not everybody is like me. Not everybody can go outside their comfort zone to say hi, and sometimes being the bridge solves a lot of issues. If that can happen in an everyday, day-to-day life with friendship, it can happen with businesses, and I fairly stand by that.
Well, folks, there you have it. This is Fatemeh Mohammadi. At the age of 9, she decided that she wanted to come to North America.
I am in North America right now.
And she's here. She actually did what she thought she was going to do at the age of 9. So for that is a gale force win. And it is my absolute pleasure to have you as a guest host on a couple of episodes, and to sit with me and have a little banter. So hopefully...
It was my pleasure being on your podcast and being given the opportunity, for sure.
Well, you've earned it, frankly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching, and we'll stay tuned. There's a lot more to come.
See ya.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins. That's Gale Force Wins, WINS.com.